This is not normal. Those three words appeared on the screen of almost every major European meteorological agency at some point in the past 48 hours, in English and French and Spanish and German, as weather station after weather station across the western half of a continent registered numbers that their instruments were never really expected to have to record in May. What is happening across Europe right now on the 26th of May 2026 is not a regional weather story. It is not a UK story. It is not even a Western European story. It is a continental climate event of a scale and timing so far outside historical norms that one of the world's most respected climatologists used the phrase mind-bogglingly crazy to describe it on live television, and nobody who heard it pushed back. The records are not being nudged, they are being demolished. And the continent responsible for more cumulative carbon emissions than any other in the history of industrialization is now sitting inside the consequences of that history on a bank holiday Monday in May, sweating through temperatures that belong to the peak of a record-breaking July. Start with the headline number because it is the one that will be in the history books. Kew Gardens in southwest London recorded 34.8 degrees Celsius on Sunday, May 25th, 2026, the hottest May Day ever measured in the United Kingdom since records began. The previous record, 32.8 degrees Celsius, had stood since 1944. It was set on May 29th that year, just days before the D-Day landings, and it survived 82 years of British spring weather without being approached, let alone broken. On Sunday, it did not just fall. It was surpassed by 2 full degrees, a margin that, in record-breaking temperature terms, represents not a nudge but a leap. The Met Office's own statement on X said what needed to be said, without any diplomatic hedging. This heat would be exceptional in the UK, even in midsummer, let alone May. And then, as if Sunday's record needed immediate company, Monday arrived. Provisional temperatures reaching 35 degrees Celsius in London, the Met Office confirmed, breaking the record set less than 24 hours earlier. Britain has now broken its all-time May temperature record twice in 2 consecutive days. The human dimension of what those numbers meant on the streets of London arrived immediately and from an unexpected source. A 10-year-old girl named Liza Nazari, visiting London on May 25th, told reporters, "The weather here, it's like a mini version of hell. It's boiling. It's like really hot." That description, delivered by a child who has grown up in a world where the concept of dangerous European heat is already familiar, is somehow more accurate than the careful probability language of any institutional forecast. A mini version of hell in London in May, in a city where the average temperature for this time of year sits between 17 and 18 degrees Celsius. The gap between what May is supposed to feel like in London and what it actually felt like on Sunday and Monday is not a weather anomaly. It is a measurement of how far the climate has moved. Across the Channel, France is experiencing what Météo-France described, using a word that French weather authorities do not deploy carelessly, unprecedented. The western French town of Bergerac recorded 34.7 degrees Celsius, while Nantes and Angers also experienced unusually high temperatures, with 8 western regions placed under heatwave alert. Charts released by meteorologists showed station after station breaking previous May 24th records, with the pink markers on weather maps representing previous record highs overtaken almost everywhere beneath the expanding plume of heat. Dozens of temperature records across French cities fell simultaneously in what Météo-France confirmed was the country's hottest May Day. On record, the French Prime Minister convened an emergency government meeting to coordinate heatwave response, a response protocol that France, having learned its catastrophic lesson from the 2003 heatwave that killed approximately 15,000 people, takes more seriously than almost any other country in Europe. The fact that the emergency mechanism has been activated in May, before the summer solstice, before the climatological peak of the heat season, is the detail that French emergency planners are finding most alarming. Spain and Portugal are sitting in the hottest part of the heat dome, and their numbers reflect it most extremely. Temperatures in Spain were expected to peak later in the week at 38 degrees Celsius, while the southwestern and central interior regions had already recorded values in the mid to upper 30s by Sunday. Portugal's southern Alentejo and Algarve regions, which regularly record some of the highest temperatures in mainland Europe during summer, were pushing toward 40 degrees on Sunday afternoon. These are temperatures that, even for Iberia, belong to the height of summer rather than the final days of May. The tourist industry along Spain's costas, already operating at near capacity for the long weekend, was fielding questions from holidaymakers about whether outdoor activities were safe, as health authorities issued guidance recommending avoidance of direct sun exposure between midday and 6 in the evening. That is the guidance Spain issues in August. It is now being issued in May. Italy added its own dimension to the crisis by taking a step that reflects how seriously Mediterranean governments now treat extreme heat events. Parts of Italy imposed restrictions on working outdoors as temperatures across the north and center of the country climbed into the low to mid-30s. The prohibition on outdoor labor during the hottest hours of extreme heat days, a measure that Italy has employed during summer heat waves for several years, being applied in May signals a recognition that the seasonal boundary of extreme heat risk has shifted permanently. When a government restricts outdoor work in May, it is acknowledging implicitly that the heat conditions it legislated against in summer are now arriving in spring. That is a policy acknowledgement of climate change that is more direct than any parliamentary resolution. Ireland recorded temperatures that, for a country whose entire climate identity is built on coolness, grayness, and rain, represent some of the most dramatic thermal departures from seasonal norms of any country in Europe during this event. Irish stations recorded temperatures in the high 20s, values that, in a country where summer temperatures rarely exceed 20 degrees and where 25 degrees constitutes a national heat wave by historical standards, generated the kind of public reaction that only genuinely unprecedented weather produces. Irish Met Ariane issued warnings covering virtually the entire country. Cardiff in Wales reached 27.4 degrees Celsius, and Armagh in Northern Ireland hit 23.4 degrees, both recording 2026 national records. The island of Ireland, north and south, experienced its hottest May temperatures on record simultaneously in an event whose geographic footprint stretched from the Atlantic coast of County Mayo to the streets of Dublin and Belfast without distinction. Germany and the Benelux countries were not spared. It was 30 to 33 degrees Celsius in Germany, around the Alps, and in parts of the Balkans, with multiple German weather stations setting new daily records for May 24th. The Netherlands recorded values that Dutch meteorologists described as completely outside the range of what their climate models considered normal for late May. Belgium, Luxembourg, and Switzerland all contributed their own record-breaking data points to what became, across the weekend of May 24th and 25, a near-continental sweep of simultaneous May temperature records in countries that between them represent several 100 million people. The physical mechanism producing this event at continental scale is a heat dome, a persistent high-pressure system that functions precisely as its name suggests, acting like a lid over a pot. The strongest heat dome so far in 2026 is delivering midsummer heat to millions of people well ahead of schedule, with temperatures soaring by 12 to 16 degrees Celsius above long-term climatological norms. A heat dome forms when the jet stream develops a pronounced northward ridge, a meander that pushes the boundary between cold and warm air masses far north of its normal position, allowing the high pressure to sit and intensify over the same geographic area for multiple days without the usual Atlantic weather systems pushing through to break it up. The air trapped beneath the dome heats progressively each day as solar radiation bakes the surface without the cooling relief of cloud cover or wind. Each day is hotter than the last. The maximum temperature is reached not on the first day of the event, but on the third or fourth, after the surface has accumulated multiple days of heating. The Sunday and Monday peaks across Western Europe represent that accumulated heating reaching its maximum, the days when the dome has been in place long enough for the atmospheric and surface temperatures to reach their highest possible values given the incoming solar radiation. What makes the 2026 event categorically different from previous European heat dome events, including the deadly 2003 heat wave, the 2019 record breaker, and the 2022 event that pushed UK temperatures above 40 degrees for the first time, is its timing. Every previous major European heat dome event on record has occurred in June, July, or August. None has produced the geographic breadth and temperature magnitude of this event in May. Historically, the hottest part of the British summer usually arrives in late July or early August. That reality is making this late May heat wave stand out even more sharply. The season has barely started. Climate researchers are not struggling to explain why this is happening. The European State of the Climate Report has been documenting for years that Europe is warming faster than any other continent on Earth, with heat waves becoming both more frequent and more intense. The 2026 May heat dome is not a surprise to the scientists who have been tracking European warming trajectories. It is a confirmation of what their models have been projecting, a shift in the seasonal distribution of extreme heat events, such that what was once a July phenomenon is now capable of occurring in May. What is a surprise, even to experienced forecasters, is the 2-degree margin by which the UK's May record was broken, and the simultaneous record breaking across so many countries at once. The human cost of the event is already being tallied, though the full mortality data will not be available for weeks. The extreme temperatures are having deadly consequences, CNN reported, as hospital emergency departments across southern England, western France, and northern Spain reported elevated presentations of heat-related illness. Elderly people living alone in buildings without mechanical cooling, which describes the majority of housing stock across all of these countries for reasons directly analogous to what the UK's Climate Change Committee described in its report published just 6 days ago, or the population most at risk during the event's peak days. Every degree above 35 increases. The rate at which the human body struggles to maintain core temperature, and at 35 degrees, the physiological margin between hyperthermia narrows significantly for anyone over 75 or with compromised cardiovascular function. The week ahead offers no immediate relief for the worst affected countries. Models show the heat dome maintaining its position. Through Tuesday and Wednesday, across much of Western Europe, before Atlantic systems begin to undermine its western edge from Thursday onward, scientists said human-driven climate change is amplifying such extremes, with Europe warming faster than the global average and heat waves growing more frequent and severe. The political pressure those words generate, stated not by activist organizations, but by the scientific bodies whose job is to provide governments with the most accurate possible assessment of climate risk, is now arriving alongside the physical heat itself in a way that makes evasion considerably harder than it was in previous years. The UK's Climate Change Committee published its landmark warning that Britain was built for a climate that no longer exists 6 days before temperatures at Kew Gardens exceeded every May reading in 82 years of records by 2 full degrees. The warning and the event arrived in the same week. The temperature record was broken twice in 2 days. And somewhere in Western Europe right now, in cities that were not designed for this, in buildings that cannot manage this, in bodies that are struggling with this, the continent is living through the future that its own emissions created, arriving not in July, not in August, but in the final week of May, weeks ahead of schedule, 2 degrees above anything history said was possible,